Today we're looking at the feed, which is basically if the project took a shit, that's what the feed would be. And as is their job of the quote-unquote left media, look at the various videos that I've done about how bullshit the dichotomy of left and right is. Their job is to attack the Labor Party on wedge issues, to try and get the Liberal Party another term, and they are doing a stellar job of stealing your tax dollars and lying to you to get a government in that doesn't work for you. Look at this perler.
Others suggested that I look into the other major party that's equally trash on the issue of asylum seekers. And to those people, I say, yes, that is a good idea. To really understand the Labor Party's position on asylum seekers, we've got to go as far back as last week and start with the least likely Labor man around.
Well, g'day everyone.
Scott Morrison's gearing up for an election about asylum seekers. We know this.
The Labor Party and the Liberal and Nationals parties are not on the same page when it comes to border protection. Labor has been dragged to support this vital legislation and then try and claim bipartisanship.
If he ever tells anyone, oh, the coalition and us, we have the same border protection policy, that's complete gumph. We don't.
I love how Scott Morrison is closer to the truth than the SBS is. Let that really sink in. The public broadcaster you pay for, whose sole job it is to tell the truth, is worse at telling the truth than a political party that has 100 spin doctors behind it.
There's no bipartisanship on this issue.
Now, I'm sitting here thinking, why is ScoMo going on about how there's no bipartisanship on asylum seekers all of a sudden? And after really thinking about this,
it really says it all that the top comment on this video is, can we defund SBS and ABC yet? Think about how sad that is. That is in their own comment section.
It became apparent to me that it's because there is indeed bipartisanship on this issue, and ScoMo is making out like there isn't in order to differentiate the coalition's tough border protection policies from Labor's, when in actual fact, they're the same. Let's take a quick look, shall we?
Yeah, see, I don't know if you know this, but giving yourself 4 chins and having a sarcastic tonality while doing a crab dance doesn't make you correct. What makes you correct is facts and not contradicting yourself, which you do several times in your own video. There's no point in me making this video. You do a good enough job of destroying yourself.
Vote turnbacks, created by Abbott, adopted by Shorten.
Very simplistic facts that co-align, which is a lot like saying that the tax policy of the Liberal and Labor government are exactly the same because they both believe in small business tax cuts, exactly the same tax cut policy. Well, if that's the case, why doesn't SBS go, we've got Ray Martin now, so we're exactly the same as Channel 9?
Nauru, opened by Howard, reopened by Gillard.
I love how that crucial, decade-long jump in policy is represented by a half-second pause. I mean, I know that in her head she'd like to think that she's opposite land Ray Hadley, and she is, but not for the reasons she thinks she is, as it seems to be her job to tell it not how it is. Conveniently forgetting that it was the Labor Party that decided to close offshore processing, which I'm sure at the time, just like all of her ilk were doing, which was going, well, now that that's over, what else can I bitch about? Oh, they haven't passed gay marriage yet! Completely forgetting that. And also conveniently forgetting why Gillard decided to reopen Nauru, which was that 1,000 people plus drowned coming to Australia. And the illegitimate reason which Rupert Murdoch was using that, oh my god, there's 10,000 refugees coming into Australia, which is way below our UN mandated targets anyway. That's why it's so crowded in Australia. Yeah, it's got nothing to do with John Howard doubling the rate of migration to almost 200,000 migrants a year. No, it's that extra 10,000 that you can really feel. So then Gillard did what a governing party is supposed to do, which is come up with uneasy compromises that satisfy no one but get the basic needs of everyone across, which was the Malaysia solution. Because if you were intellectually honest about the humanitarian issue of offshore processing, that should satisfy you at a bare minimum having it there, because I've lived in Malaysia and let me tell you, it's the home of Migarang, it's not that bad. It is basically a developed nation, and if you're a legitimate refugee, there is no problem with living in Malaysia. What she also seems to have forgotten to mention is that the Liberals blocked the Labor Party from doing this in the High Court, which has forever shut off the Malaysia solution. The reason they did that is to keep the refugee problem circulating in the headlines, as they know that it bleeds votes off the Labor Party when they do it. As you have the quote-unquote right-wing Murdoch press saying what a catastrophe it is that we're being overrun by migrants, and you have the quote-unquote left Murdoch-run media, which is SBS Viceland, which, yes, Daddy owes some shares in Viceland. Wonder why they've never done a story on him. And isn't that just indicative of what SBS Viceland is in general? This mishmash of state-run propaganda and Murdoch propaganda combined combining into one behemoth. But you have both these media outlets attacking the Labor Party as they know that it drains votes away from them, as quote-unquote right-wing voters see the Labor Party as weak on immigration, while quote-unquote left-wing voters see them as too hard on immigration. So, basically, to get the issue out of the press, they have to follow whatever the Liberal Party does. That is the political reality of the situation. And these people are part of that problem. And you explaining none of that context in your hit piece is best represented by that pause, as the silence,
Opened by Howard.
is deafening.
Regional resettlement, kicked off by Gillard, continued by the 10,000 prime ministers we've had since.
No one's made that joke yet.
Operation Sovereign Borders, started by Abbott to be continued by Shorten. Temporary protection visas, actually no, that one is different, but that is the only major difference in their asylum policy.
You don't see a major difference in there being an average processing time under Gillard of 72 days as opposed to the coalition that ballooned to 450 days, and some people have been in detention for 5 years? Because I think those people that have been there for 5 years would notice a bit of a difference. You don't see a difference in the Liberal Party spending close to $500 million on private services not rendered by the Australian public to provide for these refugees that has been completely mismanaged and put into private hands. You don't see a difference in that, Fran? You don't see a difference between a Labor politician and a Liberal politician deciding who is a legitimate refugee and who isn't, where the Liberal Party has been sending back Hazara tribe members to Afghanistan, some of the most persecuted people on earth, and the Liberals are going, well, you know, they all wear burqas, don't they? So you don't see a difference, Jed. My friends who work for refugee crisis centres vote Labor because there's clearly a difference.
At one point, under Labor, there were almost 2,000 children in detention. That number only began decreasing when the coalition took office, as did the number of overall people in detention and the number of those dying at sea that we know of. Now, these are just facts.
Yeah, facts that contradict your own argument. I would have left them out if I were you. As long as you're being dishonest, go the whole hog. Why did you include those? That just proves that Labor's policy of not processing people onshore was more detrimental to human life. So you can't have it both ways. Either you argue that you want people processed onshore, which will result in more drownings and more people in detention, or you want people processed offshore, which acts as a deterrent. Either way, I'm not saying which one's which because I haven't done enough research on this subject to make a definitive decision. All I know is that there is major differences in policy and you are purposefully conflating the two, but you don't get to have it both ways. Which one do you want? Do you want them processed offshore or onshore? Because essentially what you're saying at the moment is no matter what the Labor Party does, I'm going to shit on them, which is essentially what you do in this. Because after they just passed Medivac, which cost them 6 points in the polls, the Liberal Party is now competitive. I cannot believe this, competitive with the Labor Party in the next election because they decided that maybe a doctor should be determining who's sick enough to be treated in Australia apart from Peter Dutton. But she seems to be slamming them for making that decision, which ostensibly is what she wants because she's so concerned about refugees. And then goes on to say that 12 people have died since the Liberals have been in office and you said nothing. They passed Medivac at the expense of their own polling, where they're now in a position where they could possibly lose the next election, and you're dumping on them for that, as that's your job. As it doesn't matter to you who's in power, either way, you're going to get paid your nice little cushy salary that you probably got out of nepotism. I'll tell you who it does matter to. It matters to the people who you are leeching tax dollars off of to spread misinformation on purpose to. It matters to the people in rural Australia now who will not have access to a competent broadband network that could have delivered life-saving medical tools, but your sugar daddy said no, and you sat there and ran stories going, oh, broadband shit, and we don't know why. Word, ooh, edgy. It matters to the 700,000 poorest workers in this country who lost their penalty rates, where you ran a story and said that it was Labor's fault the penalty rates were cut, despite the minor little tidbit that they're not in fucking government. It matters to people who are in private prisons where you ran a story saying that private prisons are the tits because you get to do Aboriginal art in there. That prison is a perfect metaphor of them just spreading neoliberal bullshit, but we're hiding it under SJW bullshit. Then later on, probably because I got blowback for that story, did a story about how bad private prisons are and not mentioning once that the Liberals want to renew the contract of the very prison that they were talking about while the Labor Party wants to put it back into public hands. It also matters to the very people you're talking about in this video. I can guarantee you that the people in Nauru would be treated more humanely under a Labour government than they would a Liberal government, and she must know that on some level, and the fact that she is saying the exact opposite of that, sorry, being a journalist, I have no sympathy for you going, it's hard under a Liberal government. You accepted their dirty money and you are doing their dirty work for them, and you know it. At the end of the day, that is the ABC and SBS's job. Channel 9, Fairfax, the Murdoch Press, all of these are designed to sit there and go, how awesome is the Liberal Party, guys? Am I right? It's basically the Canberra Raiders, but in political form. And the SBS and ABC's job is to soak up natural voters of the Labor Party and sit there and convince them that the Labor Party is just as shit as the Liberals are. Their aim is to make Labor voters despondent. And if you don't believe me, look at how she wraps up her own segment.
I warned you all not to buy the coalition's bullshit. Well, you probably shouldn't buy Labor's either. And if that makes you feel despondent, well,
couldn't have put it better myself.
Please share and comment below. Comment.